Hello, I'm Faiz Rahman and welcome to Cafe DC. Our guest today is a very accomplished young US diplomat who has also worked at the White House and at the Department of Homeland Security in very distinguished positions. Let's welcome Shariq Zafar first to the Cafe DC and then Voice of America. Shariq, thank you very much. We're honored to have you here in our studios.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll just get into the discussion right now. These are very challenging times for any U.S. diplomat, much less a person who's been designated, appointed as the special representative to the Muslim communities around the world. And that's your title, right, at the State Department. So you do, unlike many other U.S. diplomats, you get to work with the Muslim communities much closely. What is your most pressing challenge right now?
Well, again, thanks for having me here. It's an honor to be here, and I've admired the show, admired your work for almost a decade now, so it's quite a privilege for me to be here. Look, it's no, as you said, these are challenging times. There are a lot of issues, and not just facing Muslim communities, but people around the world. We have a lot of challenges. The good thing is that there are opportunities as well. In my role as special representative to Muslim communities, when I talk, and I talk to my colleagues, and the point that I make, and this is something that people appreciate, but I think it's important to say, is that Muslim communities care about the same issues as everybody else. Clean economy, a growing economy, a clean environment, jobs, security, and things like that. So there are challenges, no question, when it comes to fighting extremism, making sure that there's economic opportunity, that young people have opportunities for education and growth and things like that. There's enormous challenges, but there's opportunities as well. And so the challenge of my job is that if I wanted to, I could only focus on the negatives that are happening. And there's plenty of work, unfortunately. But if I just do that, then we miss out on all these opportunities. And so, you have to strike a right balance, I think.
Good. Shariq, I'm also basically looking into this controversy which is going on around the world, Charlie Hebdo cartoon controversy, and of course it does impact your job and requires some kind of a response from your office as well, not maybe in public, but I'm sure you must be discussing this issue. So what's your take on it?
Well, look, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. One thing that people often forget is that when these types of terrorist attacks, they're committed by Al Qaeda, these other groups, the majority of victims are Muslim, right? And that's something that bears emphasizing. In fact, as we know, there was a Muslim police officer in France that
was shot right outside the office. Yeah.
And he was doing his duty as a Frenchman, as a Muslim, helping protect. His fellow citizens, and he was shot.
Yeah.
Right. And I was really moved. I heard his brother speak, and his brother said that, look, these people, they claim to be Muslims, but they're not. They're terrorists. The other day, just yesterday, I found out that one of the people, because they also attacked a grocery store, a kosher grocery store. One of the individuals who worked there was actually a Muslim from Africa, from Mali, I believe, and he actually helped keep people safe in the food locker and things like that. And he was an immigrant, so I just read an article that he's been given French citizenship. So look, we made it very clear that we stand in solidarity with the people of France. There's absolutely no excuse for this type of action. But when it comes to the victims of these types of incidents include Muslims. In fact, one of the heroes of this incident, was a Muslim. And I was talking to some Muslim friends of mine, just getting their thought, and they said something that, and this is not me talking, this is them talking, but he said that, look, if you look at the example of the Prophet, Rasulullah, about what was his example, and this is what is that, since the very start of his mission as a prophet, people were criticizing him.
He was maligned, he was abused.
Saying that he's a magician, that he's a madman, things like that. And what was his sunnah? What was the approach that he took? Well, he took a higher approach. So I think there's a lesson in that, according to my friends, that what's the proper way to respond?
Shariq, this is, pretty much clear to every Muslim, the examples of the Prophet. And we have grown up reading those examples, the seerah. But on the other hand, you see this reaction and since you travel around the world, actually just came back from
Yeah.
a whirlwind kind of a tour. So, what went wrong? What happened? Where's the disconnect between the actual teachings, the examples of the Prophet, and the reactions and the actions that you see in the Muslim world?
Look, that's a really good question, and the tendency is when someone is educated yourself, ask a really good
Yes.
question. That there's a tendency for for people to say, okay, well, I need to answer that. Now the reality is, I'm not an alim, right? I'm not a scholar. I'm certainly not an imam. I'm an American diplomat who happens to be Muslim. So I have my thoughts about things in that where if you look at the height of Islamic civilization when learning was really, really important, where people talked about the importance of the pen, and then you see the situation sometimes. But I'm not an expert in that respect. What I do know is that when I travel around the world, I see enormous potential, not even just potential, great things happening. So I'll give you an example. I was in Indonesia, in Jakarta, at a pesantren, what in Pakistan we would say a madrasa, right? And it was an incredible institution. You had boys and girls. The girls were wearing their head covering,
Hijabs,
so but they were studying together, studying high-level calculus, economics, really difficult subjects. I mean, I certainly couldn't have passed their curriculum. And these, but it was a religious school, so they had a religious instruction as well. And the great thing about it is that once they graduate, they're qualified just to go to a university. So sometimes people say that in certain madrasas, that's all you do is you memorize the Quran and things like that. Well, these guys, not only are you memorizing the Quran, learning the fundamentals of the religion, you're also learning topics,
modern
subjects,
sciences,
right?
yes.
And you can do both. There's not either or. And I think sometimes we have to remember that when you look at the height of Islamic civilization, and you look at successful Muslim business people in Pakistan, in the United States, my home state of Texas, people, it's about education. It comes that if people get educated, if girls are educated, if boys are educated, then there's enormous opportunity. The sad thing is there's some people who believe that one half of the population just shouldn't be educated, and that's something that all people of goodwill should reject, because you have to educate young people, you have to educate girls. And so I don't know, I'm not going to say anything, if anything went wrong or right or things like that. I do know is that when people get educated, success generally follows.
Or probably the people who tend to do these horrible things, probably they're more vocal, more kind of, seen in the media, rather than those who are like, just give this example about this madrasa, this is school. We don't get to see those examples in the international media.
It's people talk about this term. Where are the moderate voices? And I don't like that term moderate, because to me, if if someone's a religious person, they should. It's okay to have very devout. You can be very, very devout, and certainly in the United States, you're allowed. We're a secular government, but we're a very religious country, and people are allowed to have very devout religious beliefs, including Muslims, right? But people talk about the moderate voices. Look, the reality is that most Muslims, are quite ordinary, mainstream. These types of violent actions are an aberration. They're not something that's consistent with this, with how most Muslims, the majority of Muslims, live their lives. The challenge I think we have is we have to build a passion for moderation, right? A passion for being mainstream. It's really easy to be passionate about very extreme criminal activities, because that's who's drawn to them. People have these really extreme beliefs. Having a passion for moderation is very difficult, because most people, Muslims in Pakistan, the United States, they just want to make sure their families have enough food to eat, that their kids are getting an education and things like that. And that, frankly, is not always newsworthy, because that's quite ordinary, right? What's newsworthy, unfortunately, are things.
Unfortunately, exactly.
And so that's why it's good to have shows like this, because I've watched the guests that you put on, are such a range of people that are doing great, wonderful things and more positive things. And the more we can get sort of a positive stories out there, the more that Americans, frankly, can see positive examples of people in the Muslim world doing great things, like Mr. Eidi in Pakistan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. We need more.
Awesome
of that.
example.
Yeah.
Exactly. Of some some dedicated, some great work.
Yeah. To me, he is the model Muslim. The stuff that he's doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Eidi Saab is
He's the epitome of modesty and
Yeah.
the real work on the grassroots
Absolutely.
level.
He is the symbol,
Yes.
in my view, for what,
Right.
what's great about Pakistan, what's great about
Right.
Islam.
And he's been nominated for the Nobel Prize
Yeah, hopefully,
for a few times. So
inshallah, we'll see.
hopefully
Yeah.
he also wins it. In addition to Malala, of course,
Yeah.
another great example. Sharik, we will move on to another topic, but I
Sure.
have to ask you this question before we do that. You're a senior U.S. diplomat, and one news item which caught my eye this morning was actually it was reported by AFP, but from Russia, that a Russian media watchdog has issued instructions to the Russian media that please do not publish that cartoon because it's considered illegal in Russia. I hate to compare the foreign policies and diplomacies of different countries, but do you see some kind of a diplomatic little battles here and there going on between the countries because some people are trying to see, because the United States has definitely a different position, but it's because of the First Amendment that we have.
Yeah, and so my background, before I became a diplomat, I was a lawyer. And then I actually was
national security specialist.
Yeah, but I like to think that my roots are as a civil rights lawyer. And the one thing I would say is this: in our country, and this system works for the United States, and I think this is actually a good system for us. Now, I understand different countries have different approaches, and they have a right to their different approach. But in the United States, if a little girl walks out of her house and she wants to wear the hijab, she has an absolute right. If a Muslim family in Houston, Texas, wants to work with other Muslim families and build a mosque, they can do that. They have an absolute right. If somebody wants to, start a Islamic study group, like my mother does, with her friends, they can absolutely do that. So that First Amendment of our Constitution that protects the free speech, that protects the right to practice religion, it's the same First Amendment that allows for sometimes speech that we don't like. Now, like the President, the Secretary of State have made it clear that there are times when people say really, really awful things. But in my country, we've made the decision that it's more important to protect the right of people to worship freely, to have freedom of conscience, to practice their religion. Well, if we're going to do that, then there are times when people are going to have the right to do hateful things and things like that. And so that system works for us because we value these fundamental freedoms. Now, with respect to what another country is doing internally, you'd have to ask. I'm not going to try to get in the mind of another country and what they're doing. I'm sure they're trying to do what makes sense for their system. I think, as an American, but somebody who believes in the freedom of religion, I like the way our system works.
Very good. We'll continue our discussion with Sharik Zafar, the special representative to the Muslim communities. He was recently appointed by Secretary of State John Kerry. Please don't go away. Stay with us.
Right? We want them to be professional. I don't care about them being sensitive. I want them to be professional. So the phrase that we liked was cultural competency.
Welcome back. I'm Faz Rahman and you're watching Cafe DC. Our guest today is Mr. Sharik Zafar. He is the special representative to the Muslim communities at the Department of State. Sharik, welcome back. Well, let's move on to other topics. You're really a very accomplished young man, born and raised in the great state of Texas.
Born in Karachi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, born in Karachi.
Oh, okay. And then, of course, University of Texas, and you became a lawyer, and then you applied for a job at the Justice Department, and you were just out of the blue, I guess.
Yeah, it was a funny story. I just kind of filled out an application, and sent it in on the internet. So that's how this started.
Good. So it's an example for for those out there who are interested in federal jobs to please just don't think that these are pre-selection, so to speak.
Oh no! Listen, we need to have a diverse workforce, and it's nice. 10 years ago, when I used to be in government, you didn't see that many Muslim or Arab or South Asian Americans. Now we walk the halls. It's a very diverse workforce. That includes Arab, Muslim, South Asians. We have a Jummah prayer at the State Department. You just walk down and things like that, just because because there's a need to do that. So it's a much more diverse workforce than it was even 10 years ago.
So, what's your advice to many young people out there
Well,
when it comes to career? I have three young kids actually, so they would be watching.
well, look, I think uh, do what you love. Because if you do what you love, if you're passionate about what you do, then you'll be better at it. First of all, but second of all, be careful what you get good at. Also, because the world's a very efficient place. So if you're good,
Very competitive.
right, and so if you're good at something that you don't want to do, be very careful because you're going to have to keep doing it over and over again. I remember when I was a young lawyer, they gave me a stack of cases that I wasn't really interested in, but I did a really good job. And whenever they'd hire somebody else, a junior person, they'd go, well, you keep doing it, you're doing such a good job. And so you have to, it's a balance between working hard, trying your best, but also make sure that you do the things that you're really interested in.
Very good. Yeah,
But
please go.
I'd say one thing is, regardless of, if you're in Pakistan or the United States, this idea of civil service, of government service, of working for your country, I think it's a profoundly powerful thing. And I'm incredibly honored to work on behalf of my country and to represent my country as I travel around the world. And I think government service is a very noble and important calling. So I recommend young people, if you want to make it your entire career, do that. But even if you think about, working for a few years, serving in some capacity, it's incredibly interesting, incredibly rewarding, and it's really important that governments have the best and brightest because a lot of what we do is very important, and we need to make sure that we have as many talented people as possible working.
Good. And then you moved to Homeland Security,
Mm-hmm.
and then to the White House, and again at the Homeland Security you dealt with lots of subjects which had to do with the communities, not just Muslim communities,
Right.
other communities as well. And looking at one of your pieces, you basically discounted the use of the expression or the word sensitivities towards these communities. You thought a better expression or better phrase would be cultural competence. So tell us the difference.
Sure. So this is that's right. Now I'll give you an example. So when we're making sure our airports are safe and our airplanes are safe, and this is something that everybody wants. I don't care if you're Muslim, Arab, Christian, Jew. Everybody wants to be on safe airplanes, right? And so we have to in these days, we have to make sure that we have to screen passengers and things like that. Now, part of my job when I was there was to make sure that my men and women, our law enforcement agents, had the information they needed. Now, some people would say, okay, you need to give sort of sensitivity training to make sure that you're sensitive to different people and things like that. My audience were cops, were security officials. If I said, look, I want you to be more sensitive, that's not a message that necessarily goes over well with people who are charged with making sure that infrastructure, airplanes are safe, right? We want them to be professional. I don't care about them being sensitive. I want them to be professional. So the phrase that we liked was cultural competency. Look, understanding that just because a woman is covering her head doesn't mean that she's a threat. That just means that she's likely a practicing Muslim. Similarly, a Sikh man that wears a turban. And why do you do that? Understanding that, just getting them information. It's not about being sensitive. It's about doing your job and being professional. And I'll tell you, the best ideas oftentimes came from communities. I remember we were having a community roundtable with Muslim and Arab communities in Texas, and it was right before the Hajj. Now, this is around 2005 or 2006, and we had a liquid restriction. So if you had more than 3 ounces of liquid, you were not allowed to carry it on. Well, it was right before the Hajj. Now, we know that when you go to Hajj, what do you bring back?
Pilgrimage, yes.
What do you bring back? Zamzam.
Zamzam.
Holy water. So you can imagine that if some people had spent their entire life waiting to do the Hajj, to saving up money, they have a fantastic, very deeply spiritual pilgrimage. They come back, they have Zamzam, holy water, but because it's more than 3 ounces, they're forced to pour it out. Now, what type of message is that send? So that was an issue that the community, the American Muslim community, raised to us. And they said, are you ready? And we said, wow, no, we're not. So we came back to Washington. We didn't change the security policy one bit. But what we did is we told our officers that, look, make sure that you have messages telling people, including pilgrims, any type of water, including holy water, needs to be in their checked luggage, right? And just getting information out there. And by the way, that was not only culturally competent, that actually helped our security, because now instead of wasting their time pouring out holy water, our men and women were free to actually look for suspicious conduct. So this is one thing.
This is more cost effective.
Absolutely.
You saved hours and hours
It's,
of work.
it's a win-win solution about having the information, having the information that you need to do your job better. And I'll have to say, I wish we could take credit for that, but we didn't. That was the American Muslim community sharing information with us, and then frankly making all Americans safer by making sure that our law enforcement officials were more efficient.
Sharik, you've been talking about, for a long time, I have heard you speak on many occasions about integration of communities, not just Muslim communities. And you have given examples of Europe, and you have done some comparison as well. What do you think the state of integration here in this country of not just Muslims, but also other minorities?
Well, look, we're a nation of immigrants. The United States has every ethnicity, religion, race, tribe, sect as part of our national citizenry. It's a part of the American fabric. That makes us stronger. That's a national asset. We're a better country because of that. I fully believe that. If you look at statistics, if you look at the number of businesses that have been started by immigrants in Silicon Valley, it's something like 40%. And so it helps our economy. It creates tons of opportunities for all Americans. So we're we're really proud to be a nation of immigrants. Now the challenge is when you accept immigrants, you have to make sure that they have the same opportunities, that their rights are protected. And so it's look, there's an obligation on the part of immigrants to integrate and become part of the society. Similarly, there's an obligation on the part of the host country to make sure that there's civil rights are protected, that discrimination is punished, that labor markets are open, that you have an opportunity as an immigrant to get a job. And I got to say, the United States, we're not perfect. No country is perfect. We can always do better. But the immigrant experience for many families has been very positive, including my family. Like my father, he had a nice job in Karachi, but he was able, because he was an engineer, he was able to get a work permit shortly after he got a green card, and that's been an incredibly wonderful decision for our family because we've had all these opportunities here. That said, my family in Pakistan or in other parts of the world are very, doing really well. But as an American, I got to tell you firsthand what I've seen. The immigrant experience is overwhelmingly a positive experience. Now, are there challenges? Absolutely. As you probably know,
Exactly,
this immigration debate continues to be front and center of our politics. So it's not easy, right? But there's no question in my mind, based on my experience, that immigrants and immigration is overwhelmingly positive for our country.
Sharik, this is Cafe DC. And I want to end this show on a lighter note.
Okay.
I have met your beautiful family, your daughter, your parents. So let's talk about your family.
All right.
A little bit. I know you're a proud husband and a proud dad. So.
Well, look, the reason you do what you do and the reason what I do is, is for our family. Every day. That's the best thing. And it's I'm really lucky. In many respects, to have a family that supported, my parents, helped me with paid for my education, gave me all the opportunities in the world. My wife is really supportive. Unfortunately, sometimes when I have to travel around the world, she has to play a bigger role in taking care of the kids. But look, we do this because this is about our families,
Absolutely.
And so you do what you do to support your family. I do what I do. And I think I've met your family as well, your beautiful family, and I speak for both of us, but know that we have better halves waiting for us at home.
Absolutely, and I'm sure it's very taxing on your wife, especially. Your travel and so much work that you have to tend to each day.
It's interesting. It's a modern life. Oftentimes, in Washington D.C., often is what we call a two-income town, and she's quite accomplished in her own right. So it's one of those things where it's a partnership. It's a partnership, and you help each other out. When she has to work, then sometimes I have to stay home. But look, the more time I get with my kids and my wife, there's nothing better than that. You can be all over the world, traveling, meeting with high-level dignitaries, but when you get home, you realize, wow, this is where I need to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sharik Zafar, thank you very much for
Thanks so much
being
for
here on
having
this
me.
show. It's such an honor, especially on such a short notice and.
No.
Your schedule. So.
Well, look, it was a privilege, and like I say, I know who your viewers are because I've watched the show for a while, and if people would like to be connected, my Twitter handle is @Sharik, @Special Representative MC. I've got a Facebook page as well, so please,
we'll make sure that we insert this in our
viewers to stay connected. If they have ideas about things that we should do together, we need all the help we can get.
Great having you here.
All right.
Thank you very much for watching Cafe DC. See you next time.